So, hello and welcome to episode 2 of our podcast. And we thought
Okay.
that it would be a good idea to discuss how things were for us at the beginning, the things that we went through, a little bit of our background as well. So, people who went through similar experiences or can relate to us in a certain degree, they can know where we came from and the things that we went through, which led to other things and the whole connection of the dots and the cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, on that note, I'm going to start simply by saying that we both came from, or we had really similar backgrounds where we both came from, well, Syria. We went through the
Yeah.
war, absolutely traumatic experience. Um, we both didn't really fit that well in our society. Both felt like we were, to a certain degree, I would say at least, outcasts.
Yep.
And we didn't even try that much. At least I know that I tried a little bit. I don't think that you tried as much as I did to fit in the society and bend who you are to a certain degree
Oh,
to.
I tried a lot.
Okay, so you tried as well.
Mhm.
See, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
interesting for me, to be honest. But we tried, I would say, to a certain degree at least, to fit in and just be part of
Society.
that community, that the culture community that
Yeah.
we've had there. For me, it didn't work out that much.
Me either.
But I'm just going to go ahead and just ask you, how did it work out for you? Or what was
Okay.
the consequences of the actions that you took, and how did that lead you to get to the lowest point in your
Yeah.
life, which in return led you to start taking action and deciding that you want to take a different path in your life?
All right. So for me, we both came from a war-torn country, and I didn't really fit in my country, Syria, anyway. And I always wanted to leave and go somewhere else. So for me, the war was like a silver lining, and I thought I would fit in if I go to Europe, where I watched a lot of movies and TV shows, and like I got interested in this culture way more than my culture. And so I left Syria. I went to Sweden. I tried to fit in with the people there, but I was just in shock because the people weren't exactly as I thought they were. Like I thought I would fit in instantly, but it's not like that. It's a culture I don't know anything actually about. So I lived there for 2 years. I didn't like it. I didn't fit in. I came to Germany. Same story. I got to meet people. And I also tried, like, I wasn't drinking alcohol. Then I started to drink alcohol because I wanted to fit in the community. And I tried and did a lot of things just to be part of the group. But I still always felt like I don't belong there. Like, it's just my body is there, but my mind is completely somewhere else. And for years, I kept meeting and losing people until I got introduced to drugs. I became addicted to multiple drugs because it was my escape, my distraction from this harsh reality that I don't fit anywhere. I don't belong anywhere. I don't have many friends. So my lowest point would be when I started to realize that I don't want to be addicted to drugs anymore. So I stopped taking drugs and I stopped talking to all the people that I was trying too hard to belong to, to that they would accept me. I was trying too hard to fit into that group.
So I have a question related to that, because you said that you've assumed and thought that you, by moving to Europe, you would fit in a bit more with the culture.
Yeah.
And that was your first motivation to even go to Sweden and from Sweden to Germany. So my question would be, what made you think or assume that the culture here would be more fitting for the kind of person that you are?
It's more because of it's actually interesting because now I know it is not something that you should hold of value where you should belong to. I cared a lot about the external things that I like the music, the movies, all the things that are, external, not related to me personally, but I like this kind of music. So I should live in that country because they make that music. Or, it was all external reasons. But this is actually not a measurement that I use anymore to decide where I fit and where I don't. So, I was a teenager. I thought, this country makes metal music, so I should go and live there because I love metal music. And then I realized
can relate to
not at all what I thought it would be. So, just teenager thoughts and teenager motivations and stuff. So, and when I stopped taking drugs, when I stopped talking to all of these people, this is where my lowest point was. When I started to go back to childhood and realize I had trauma from the war, and all of the other issues, the social anxiety, the pressure, the lack of confidence. And this is actually where we knew each other since we were children, but when we actually started to talk is when I moved my cousin during COVID, and you were living with him there, where you were living in the school.
So the funny thing is that shortly after, so we moved in throughout. So you moved into Ascot, per se, when you were going through your lowest point.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that shortly after that, I also was starting to get to a point where I had to change some stuff. For me, it was a little bit different. I actually assumed for some reason that we had a little bit more of a similar backstory, but I guess that wasn't actually the case because for me, it's a little bit different because
it's only the source. Like,
exactly,
we came from a war-torn country,
So we have exactly like
just
the bigger background is the same, but when you go a little bit more into personal stuff, it's actually different.
Very different.
So for me, it was like all the stuff that I went through, including the war and the social anxiety and the whole bunch of stuff, led me to make a persona for myself, which worked for me as a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
That I'm a hardworking guy, I'm this and that, I'm extremely logical, I'm this and that. This whole image of this is who I am and this is the guy that's going to protect me from external harm. Exactly. And then in Germany, after I moved here, of course, I was still in that persona and I was working on a bunch of stuff. I remember like the first 2-3 years in Germany, I was doing stuff extremely hard without stopping, like the language and the school, the repeating high school's work, doing my license, finishing my paperwork, taking care of paperwork for the family. And it was like a bunch of stuff that I was doing at the same time, which was my persona back then. And then COVID hit. Suddenly, you moved in, which fit in with the time that you moved into us. Yeah. And then when COVID hit, all the stuff that my persona was connected to, that persona that I created for myself was just gone.
Yeah.
So I went from like, okay, this is who I am under this image of myself, which says this and this and this and this. And then COVID came, and then all of the stuff that were listed on that were just gone because, so you had like for college, I had online classes. I didn't have
your identity in a sense, like your identity was gone all of a sudden.
Exactly, because my identity was based on a lot of external things, specifically on things that I did, and not on things that I wanted to be. If that makes sense. So, like, do you know the quote? Like, do you love you for who you are, or do you love you for what you do?
Okay,
and my persona was based on what I did. And
so
what
based
I did,
on your achievements.
Exactly. And what I used to do, or my achievements, were connected to the outside world through COVID. That was gone. So with time, during the COVID crisis and the whole lockdowns and so on, that persona just crashed down.
Yeah.
The lucky thing is that you were there going through your lowest point as well. So I guess that's exactly what got us to connect a little bit more.
Yeah, we were in a similar spot.
Exactly.
Even though we had different circumstances. Like, I think the difference for me mostly is that I didn't even have a persona. Like, I didn't have achievements. I had nothing. I was just, in a sense, wasting time. And I took my persona from external things, from the achievements of others, the characters that I like, the music that I love, like the musicians. These are like, I idolized them. Like, I want to be this, but I am nothing. And this is why I use distractions. So we met at that point where we were in a similar spot, but we reached that spot through completely different roads.
Yeah.
But we still related. But I was noticing that you were, like you were more of a routine guy and stuff. So that's when I started to ask you.
That was my persona, technically.
Yeah, but we talked about this in the previous episode. Like, I saw that you had confidence and that you had everything under control. So I wanted to have that as well. This is where the moment where I stopped taking drugs, I became more sober. I started to realize I want to change my life, but I don't know how to start with that. So for me, it was different things at the same time where the initiation of this change started, like the spark. And one of them was talking to you, talking about habits and about routine. How do you actually build a routine? And I actually discovered MBTI, the personality types, which is something that some people might consider shallow. But for me at that time, discovering my personality type
gives you a sense of who you are,
identity,
a sense of belonging. Because like it says, so like when you do the test, which is related to a lot of things, the way that we like to categorize ourselves, especially in today's society. So because I did the test as well.
Yeah.
And you're the one who actually got me into it.
Yeah. I was obsessed with it for a
Same,
while. Like,
same.
it gave me this direction, this identity. Oh, I am this. This is what I like, what I dislike. This is what I should improve.
Exactly what I
and this is
meant.
what I should avoid.
Because I
So-
believe that before that, if you're going to go like a little small tiny step backwards, we both were kind of lost. And we both had like somewhat a certain degree of an identity crisis where we didn't really know who we are and what we wanted to do and all those kind of questions.
Yeah.
And finding something like the personality type test or the 16 personality MBTI gives you a sense of, at least for me, it gave me a sense of direction. Like, okay, this is who you are. These are your strengths. These are your weaknesses that are a little bit overgeneralized.
What should I work on?
Exactly. And that gives you like a sense of a direction about, okay, so if I focus on my strength, I focus on my weaknesses, and we both got a little bit too much into it.
Yeah.
Which
I got totally obsessed. Like,
same. I can remember that.
Yeah. But for me, this is like, as much as I see it as a tool now, back then it was like discovering myself. This was the stepping stone, like one of the first things that actually made me realize why I do things the way I do, why I still don't have a purpose in life, why I keep gaining interest on multiple things and then losing interest instantly, which are traits for the ENFP, INFP personality. So it made sense. Okay, I am doing all of this is happening because of my personality type. So you start to realize, okay, what should I improve? What should I get rid of? Like, now I see it as only a tool that I can use from time to time, but back then it was something that gave me like a full direction and it gave me more meaning and like an identity that I lacked.
I think for me, it was a little bit of a different story, to be honest, because even back then, I still used to listen to, I wouldn't really call them podcasts or I wouldn't even call them motivational speeches. I would call them something between the lines of a speech, where somebody is telling a story of theirs, trying to get people to relate to them and giving a moral of that story that would lead somewhere.
Yeah.
And one of the first few people that I actually listened to was called Brendan Burchard. And that guy wrote the book called High Performance Habits, How Extraordinary People Become That Way.
Okay.
Even though his story resonated with me so much at that time, or in that phase in my life, I bought the book, which luckily he was selling for free, to be honest, but he was just getting the books for free and trying to tell as many people as he could, which is another reason why I like the guy and I had a lot of respect for him. So I bought the book, and the book was on my shelves for like a year. And then around the time that he started with the MBTI, that was the same time when I looked at the book and I was like, oh, right. There was the story of this guy who wrote this book that resonated with me so much. So I went back to his speeches, saw a couple of them, got back into his story, read a little bit about him, listened to a lot of his speeches. And it was the first book that I read before I got into the MBTI.
Okay.
Which I got into it. Exactly. I had a little bit of a different.
So you were already starting on the like self-improvement journey, but maybe in an indirect way, or like you already had things that you were.
I had my interest in philosophy and psychology.
Okay, yeah.
It wasn't like I'm working on myself or a growth mindset. It was just like interested in philosophy, like psychology, curiosity.
I would say I relate to that as well, because even before MBTI, I used to watch a lot of like these short videos on YouTube. Like there is this channel called Psych to Go, I think. It's a very friendly channel that describes mental health issues, like what narcissism is, what the cognitive dissonance is, like all of these different terms and stuff. Because I also was and still am a very huge fan of psychology. Like I'm obsessed with this topic and just realizing why I do things the way that I do and why other people behave the way that they do. So I was always interested and curious about these topics, but I still wasn't like working on myself. I was just like gaining this knowledge that I wasn't applying in any kind of sense. So MBTI was actually the start where I actually started to apply things in my own life for a change, you know? And of course, all the talks that we had and stuff. So I would say that was like the spark, the thing that ignited the flame, you know? So, and after that, you know, I moved out from the place that you guys were living in, and I went on my own. I found a new job. I started to feel more like I'm going somewhere. And this is where I started reading self-help books. And for me, the first book, and I still consider it the most important book in this genre, is Atomic Habits. This is the book. I already knew a little bit about habits from our talks and stuff. And this book made me realize, how can I get rid of bad habits and good habits? I was smoking weeds and cigarettes. I was doing a lot of bad things, bad behaviors. I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to improve my life. So it taught me how to build all of these different habits. And the first things that might seem really small, but they actually made the biggest difference. It's like cold showers and waking up a little bit earlier and all of these different things. So I would say that's how it started for me with habits.
The thing for me was like, after I finished reading the High Performance Habits book, I thought to myself, like, I could relate to that book to a certain degree. I'm not trying to paint myself here as a high performance, God forbid. But the way that it was describing high performance, it was like a lot of stuff that resonated with me. But at the same time, I knew that something was still holding me back.
Yeah.
And that's around the time when you also told me about Atomic Habits and the other books that you read. And then I got into reading Atomic Habits as well, because I thought to myself that if the first book had actually taught me so much and gave me a lot of new perspectives, was the first nonfiction book that I've ever read in my life, a second book would do the same. Yeah. You would just assume that, okay, well,
it's a chain effect.
Exactly. And then
it starts with one book. And
then Atomic Habits also gave me a lot of insight about... So in Atomic Habits, for example, like the most important things that actually stuck with me from back then and still are in my brain till now, which is like replacing the habits and going even after the smallest things.
Starting small.
Exactly. That's so like crucial. Even 1% better a day is going to lead to a huge percentage of being better at the end of the year or after a specific period of time. And through Atomic Habits, that's when I went into my rigid self, per se.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember that, but I started instantly working with like to-do lists, goals and this and that, which in return led to more books reading, more trying to figure out who I am.
I would guess maybe you took that persona that you built before, like took parts of it and integrated it in your real personality.
It's not like when you have an identity crisis that your persona just goes away. The persona stays there.
Yeah.
You just become... So you can
become more aware
like this. Exactly. Yeah. So like if you're going to take my analogy in this, that the one that I've mentioned to you a lot, which I look at our lives in the sense of like, you're born, you have this statue of yourself, and then you've got a hammer and a nail.
Sure.
And then as you go on in life, you start hitting it, trying to reform the statue, reshape the statue in the way that you want to, or the way that you should do.
You are born like in an empty slate, and you just fill it up and change it.
And life challenges and the things that happen to you, the mindset, the perspective shifts that you get, that this and that, like, life is full of a lot of different things. They can take them as like you did a wrong hit or lightning strike or whatever, and then something within the shaping went a little bit wrong. So instead of like, say you want to go for a straight line here with the cutting, and then you go with a 30,
which is bound to happen.
Exactly,
like, you can't avoid it.
And then you get the persona, which I had, with all the pieces of who I am.
It's like a wrong direction in a sense.
Over the ground, exactly. And then with time, you just put the pieces back together slowly.
You start to walk back,
exactly,
to find another road,
and you're just connecting it to like the persona is still there, but I'm just gonna try to reshape this persona into who I am and who I want to be.
You still learn something from that persona. It's not completely like, oh, this was a waste of time. This is not me. But it wasn't you, sure. But there are things. It helped you
exactly
things in your life.
The persona got you to where you are.
Sure.
But yeah, so I took a little bit of a different approach to it, where my persona still helped me being a bit more rigid with the to-do list, with the habits reforming and the things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Which in return, at some point, I guess at that point for you, you were already starting with meditations.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that to me through the app.
Yeah.
Sorry, waking up.
Waking up.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember that how we both got really addicted to that. I guess the main thing that I took from meditation, at least, was that meditation is a really slow process that you've got to learn to enjoy the peace in it.
And it's a state of mind. It's not something that you get better at. It's something that you understand more, in a sense. Like, there is, like Sam Harris always said, whenever you use meditation, he's always like, there is nothing to improve. There is nothing to get better at. It's not like, I mean, you can call it a skill, but it's not a skill in the sense that you're always sitting in a meditation trying to get better at meditation. You just understand the state of mind more the more you do it. Like, for example, you're meditating for years and then someone comes at you and yells at you. You start to see your reaction 2 years ago and your reaction now, how little you get affected by this anger that you are receiving from this another individual.
It gives you like a third person perspective.
It's like a detachment from,
exactly.
from your experience.
Perspective from what's going on around you. Because like, the main goal of it is, and which even Sam Harris mentioned a lot of in his guided meditation practices.
Yeah.
And he goes like, when he talks about thoughts and emotions as in they're just something that's passing by and you're not forcing them out of your head, but you're just letting them pass by. And then I feel like that gives you that sense of like, this is reality. This another layer is my thoughts and my emotions.
Yeah.
And this is my higher self who's like,
who's not
kind of in control.
Yeah.
He just has a broader view about what's going on. And
it's like
you
your
can
consciousness,
control stuff. Exactly.
Who's aware, like this, we tend to attach ourselves too much to our thoughts and emotions, whether they are positive or negative. Like, we get a negative thought or maybe an evil thought or bad thought, and we say, oh, we are bad people, we are evil. We start to guilt ourselves. But these are thoughts you are not in control of. Most of them are an influence because of a movie that you watched or something that someone said when you were 5 years old. Like, these are not yours. And meditation teaches you how to detach yourself from these emotions and thoughts and realize that it's not under your control and you don't own everything. So meditation was very big for me because I was, and I still am to a certain degree, socially anxious, but meditation helped me to improve in how to deal with my thoughts. And if I go to a bad place, if I am depressed, how to make that time period of depression less prone or maybe shorter. Like, an older me would maybe get upset of something. I would be upset for a week. And now I would be upset for like a few hours and then it's over. So for me, that was meditation.
It's the detachment kind of that gives you
exactly.
That gives you the chance. At least I would assume that it gives you the chance to have a different perspective at things.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which can help with the processing.
You feel the emotion, you get the thought, you are in it, but you get out of it faster than usual if you don't know anything about meditation. So that's why I want to emphasize on the starting small with all the habits, like whether it's meditation, it is cold showers. These are things that might seem really small, like, oh, what would happen if I take a cold shower every day for 2 minutes? Many people would think it doesn't do anything. It's just, 2 minutes shower. It's uncomfortable. But this is what is going to make big changes in the future, because you wake up, you start your day, you start your day with meditation, with cold showers, with doing this, doing that, all of these like productive, hard things. You start your day with that, then you'll be more able to do hard things that might take more effort,
The issue with that is, since we're not the only ones that we're talking about this topic, I've heard this being mentioned hundreds, if not thousands of times. Exactly. And I think that kind of creates that
pressure,
that kind of mindset, or that it forces the mindset on people that these are the kind of things that you have to do.
Okay, yeah.
And I think the main goal is, whether it's meditation, cold showers, breathing, or this and that, is to find the things that would fit you for who you are, and kind of just starting with it, even just experimenting with it for a little bit here and there till you decide on what works for me, and what could I benefit from this. Like the main goal or the main idea is, if I'm going to summarize it really quickly, is that you should have the willingness to be vulnerable with starting something new.
Yeah.
In the sense of, this is just like a really good definition of vulnerability that I love. The vulnerability is that you're willing to put yourself in a position where you could get hurt or disappointed. And the willingness to start something new with your life, whether it's meditation, reading a book, writing, journaling,
anything that might be a bit hard at the beginning.
Anything that you've never done before.
Yeah, which is automatically hard to do, uncomfortable.
So just have the willingness to start something new.
Try things.
And you never know. Say you picked up something and you just decided that you're going to stick up with it for a week or two. Yeah. And you can see after a week or two, maybe it will lead you somewhere where you're going to be extremely happy or in a better place. Or maybe you won't do anything and you're going to be like, oh no, this made me miserable.
This wasn't for me.
Exactly. And then you can always stop.
This actually brings me to the point that I wanted to talk about, which is the danger of self-help books. Because I think they are extremely important and helpful for people who are starting on this self-improvement journey. But it happened to me, and I'm sure it happens to many people, that you start to take them too seriously and to apply everything to the letter. And if something doesn't work, you get stressed, like, oh, I can't do this. I'm not good enough.
Maybe I'm beyond help.
Maybe I'm beyond help. This is not working. He said this in the book, but I am not able to do it. So I can't do anything. So this is where it can be dangerous, and we shouldn't take everything too literally. It's like these books are meant to give you kind of a tool or a guidance to how to improve your life, but you should try things. You should try what is mentioned, but if something doesn't work, just try something else. And I think the core message here, or the point that I want to relate to, is the idea of instant and delayed gratification, and how understanding the difference between these two things is actually the key to know how to do things, how to build good habits, and to see what works for you and what doesn't work.
So with the self-help books, I think this is how I define them for myself. A bit later down the road, I went into that bit for like everybody else. But at some point later on, when I started reading this non-fiction self-help kind of books, is that I went and decided that, okay, the self-help book is just going to give me sort of a perspective shift.
Yeah.
Just like what the name of our channel, which is going to give me which is going to tell me okay, so you can go down this path, this or that, and do something with it.
Yeah.
But what's written in the book, it's a general idea for everyone.
Something that works for the right.
Exactly. It works for people, but that doesn't mean that it necessarily works for everybody.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, I'm going to start with this and I'm going to experiment a little bit around to see what works exactly for me. So like, even to this point, I still experiment a lot with habits. What is the best or easiest way to build a habit for myself or change a habit?
But you also need to give it time. Like, this is the thing.
Yeah,
when
for
you
sure.
try to do something.
So I've tried about 4 different methods in the past 2 years. So let's say on average, 6 months per method about how to build habits or how to be more productive.
You need to give it time to see
giving it time, exactly. And that's something that's related exactly to the delayed gratification.
And this is a topic, like maybe
in a
future episode we'll go more in depth in it. But I wanted to mention it here because we've been talking the whole time about how we started with our self-improvement journey. And in the beginning we were lost. Like, how does it work, But now
it's like you have a lot of questions and no answers.
Yeah, exactly. But
and that's when anxiety and depression creeps in.
And we were both people we were distracting ourselves with so many things that give us a lot of dopamine, which is like instant gratification.
That's not something that I can deny.
And all of the changes that we did, so for me is like the cold showers and the meditation, I didn't see result in the first 10 days or even in the first 30 days. So there is a world where I would have quit doing all of these good things because I didn't see result. But I kept going because I keep hearing people saying it's a good thing, keep on going. And some of them actually I started to see results and other things didn't work for me. And so I replaced these things with other things that worked better for me. But I also needed even more time to see the results.
Yeah.
So it's really a slow process, and we need to be really, really patient. And to be patient, we need to get rid of the bad habits that give us instant gratification that we get used to because of all the dopamine that's being
I think
released.
there's one thing that we shouldn't just. I'm just going to put this out there quickly, just from my perspective. It's also another topic for another day. But I think the difference there is, or a difference that we have to think about and keep in mind, is definitely whether you're just starting with the journey or you're midway through the journey. Because when you're starting with the journey, you always need something different, something that's going to keep you going, something that's going to give you some motivation.
Sure.
And then once you are in the middle of the journey or down the road further, you need something that's going to keep you a bit more consistent and wouldn't let your higher or your super ego kind of creep in or take control and then maybe make you a little bit more anxious.
It will always try.
Exactly. So for sure. Like that's not something that
never goes away.
That never goes away. But it just, I find it differs whether you're like at the beginning of the journey or somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
So
it's about how fast do you give in to your impulses. I think that's a difference between when you're starting and when you're like a bit further in the journey. Like in the beginning, it's much easier to fall back. The things that I used to do, the bad things that, the instant gratification habits.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it becomes harder to fall back now. Like you get the thought, you get the impulse, but do you act on it or not? So for me, the difference is now I act less on the impulse. Sometimes I do. But less than before. Okay.
We can go deep into this again.
This is a long topic, and I think
my mind is already going to a lot of places, connecting dots and wanting to explain a lot of things.
I would say this is a good point to stop. And this is something that we wanted to mention briefly, like the instant and delayed gratification, and we'll probably talk about it more
in the next
future episode, or maybe in the next episode for sure.
Probably in the next episode, it's going to be like a little bit of a follow up with. Okay, so
it's going to be like
was
the continuation of the story. Like
this is how we started. Exactly. These are the habits that we took, and then this is how we started defining things for ourselves.
This is how we got better at doing things and like understanding ourselves more. And maybe this will be like the next episode. I just want to mention that I'm pretty sure everyone goes through the same stages in the self-improvement, like the prior stage where you're struggling.
I do believe in that as well.
But everyone has a different story, has a different path. Like we are best friends and we agree on many things and we have similar thoughts, but we still, the backstory, how we started and what we were struggling with, it's completely different.
For sure.
But but the stages of the journey are pretty similar, and this is why I think many people will relate to this. Anybody who's watching this, like, might relate to this, whether they are in the beginning of the self-improvement journey or they're thinking about starting. So I think it is really important to talk about the stage before we go on talking about other topics. So
exactly.
This is why we're doing this like multiple episodes where we're going to talk about how we started with this journey, what got us here, where are we going.
That was technically the original plan, that we would just like talk a little bit about how the beginning was, and then as time goes on and as we elaborate a little bit more about it, maybe we can start talking about more
general,
hotter or more complicated topics per se,
or maybe topics that are not related directly to us or our experience. Like we're talking now more about our experience. So that's it.